Tonight on KTN Prime.
We expect Kenyan authorities to arrest Walter Barasa and hand him over to the court.
Another Kenyan ICC suspect, journalist, is accused of bribing witnesses.
Nilipomwona huyu msichana mdogo, nikaona akiwa mtoto wangu.
Westgate heroes, the policemen who risked their lives to save others.
And just who are the Westgate looters?
Also coming up, the mother of all parties for Berlin Marathon winners.
This is KTN Prime with Linda Ogutu and Ben Katili.
A very good evening from the Standard Group Center here in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, on the second day of October 2013, a day the ICC trial resumed. Many thanks for joining us on the program.
Right, yet another Kenyan may be facing trial at the International Criminal Court in The Hague after an arrest warrant was issued for one Walter Osapiri Barasa.
Now, Barasa is accused of bribing witnesses, but as KTN's Edith Kimani reports, the ICC may have to wait a while before their suspect is delivered to The Hague.
For the fourth consecutive week, Kenyans have walked the steps leading to the chambers at the International Criminal Court, and today was no different. A new group of legislators here to support Deputy President William Ruto lined to meet him before his hearing in Chamber 5A. But in a different chamber, Judge Kuno Tafusa was dipping Kenya into deeper ICC involvement. The single judge of pre-trial Chamber 2 unsealed an arrest warrant for journalist Walter Barasa, and this is why.
There is evidence to suggest that Walter Barasa tried to bribe someone he thought was a prosecution witness in the case against Mr. Ruto.
But this is not news to Barasa. An under seal warrant of arrest was issued against him exactly 2 months ago, and he spoke out firmly against it.
I'm ready to defend myself, but I'm not ready for somebody to come put words into my mouth for his interest.
These are serious issues that we consider.
False or not, Kenya, being a signatory to the Rome Statute, is obligated to arrest and transfer Barasa to The Hague. Observers say this will be a test of Kenya's newly confessed cooperation to the court, given the country's previous refusal to arrest Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir. But the situation may not be so clear-cut. Attorney General Professor Githu Muigai issued a statement saying the judiciary holds the final decision on whether to enforce the warrant. Muigai's statement explained that the International Crimes Act requires that the Minister of Interior, after formally receiving the warrant, present it to the judiciary for enforcement. The judiciary then has to determine the legality of the warrant, during which time Barasa can make representations to the court.
All rise. Veuillez vous lever.
But as Kenya waits to make a move, the joint case against Deputy President William Ruto and journalist Joshua Arap Sang goes on.
Mr. Khan.
Hearings continued today after an adjournment allowing the Deputy President to be in Kenya to deal with the Westgate Mall attack. But the court is now trying to recover this lost time. Judges presiding over the case cancelled a scheduled break in the hearings to allow the proceedings to move with speed. This will mean Ruto will be away from office throughout the month. But if the hearings go on without more adjournments, it could be the last time both Ruto and Sang appear in The Hague this year. Until then, it will be 4 more weeks of small Kenyan delegations waiting by the doors of The Hague. Edith Kimani, KTN Prime.
A new twist to the ICC proceedings there. Back in the country, embattled Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, Gladys Soleil, has submitted a written response over charges raised by the Judicial Service Commission. Soleil now wants her submission to be availed to the public. She's also opposed to being investigated by the JSC. KTN's Aaron Ocheng reports.
It is a saga that has put Kenya's third arm of government squarely on the spot. After her request for extension of time before responding to JSC's accusations was turned down, the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary finally submitted her responses on the deadline of the 21-day period given to her. Today, the Judicial Service Commission was perusing through submissions, and according to insiders in the closed-door meeting, the determination of the verdict to be handed to Sholei was not reached before the 8-hour meeting was adjourned. Her defense letter is addressed to the chairperson of the Judicial Service Commission, Chief Justice Dr. Willie Mutunga, and copied to the Auditor General, Public Procurement and Oversight Authority, Clerk of the National Assembly and of the Senate, and to Cabinet Secretary Treasury. In it, Sholei first says she preferred the whole investigations against her to be made public due to the interest already generated. She further discredits the body investigating her, the Judicial Service Commission, saying allegation touching on procurement ought to have been investigated by relevant authorities, in this case, Public Procurement Oversight Authority. Sholei further says in her submission that it is highly erroneous to term as irregular spending of budgeted monies which have been passed by Parliament and the National Treasury, and asked why the Office of the Auditor General was left out in the investigations against her. On the procurement of building to house judicial officers, Sholei says it was done above board and due diligence conducted before awarding of tenders. Sholei has been accused by the Judicial Service Commission of, among other things, mismanagement of human resources that includes irregular salary allocations, irregular secondment, failure to develop human resource work plan, irregular staff promotion, among others. Earlier in the week, the Law Society of Kenya warned the judiciary that it would institute a legal process to have the JSC members removed from office if they fail to resolve the standoff in a week's time. Aaron Ocheng, KTN.
The attack on the Westgate shopping mall was one of the worst terrorist attacks the country has ever experienced. Yet, in the midst of the anguish and sorrow, heroes emerged, among them police officers who risked their lives to save those of civilians stranded inside the mall. Meet Aidan Ia, Stephen Lelei, Tafik Baya, and Benjamin Chemjor, the police officer who was seen in pictures carrying a baby out of the building.
They troop in 4 police officers, 4 men in uniform, 4 heroes. Under the glare of the cameras, they fidget. Yet they did not flinch when faced with danger at the Westgate shopping mall. And the roles they played on 21st September have put them in the spotlight. Chief Inspector Stephen Lelei, the OCS at Kabete Police Station, rushed to the mall to find police officers milling around. As a more senior officer, he would end up issuing commands to all the police officers, including administration police officers, officers in the flying squad, as well as those from the Special Crime Prevention Unit. Lelei came face to face with the attackers.
Tukapigana nao, wakateremka mpaka first floor, wakaingia kwa supermarket ndani. Mmoja alikuwa amevalia nguo shati white, na mmoja alikuwa amevalia nguo grey.
Those who saw Eden, Ia and Tofik Baya in photos that emerged later may have wondered how the two ended up at the mall, given that they are both drivers of senior officers. But video footage shows Eden rescuing this woman and her 2 children, while Tofik was later seen carrying the girl to safety. Both officers had dropped off their superiors at the scene when they joined in the operation. They heard of a mother and her 2 children who were stranded inside the mall, lying on the floor.
Huyu mwenzetu tukamwambia because yeye alikuwa anaseska na sisi tulikuwa na bunduki kubwa hatuwezi cross kwenda paka hapo, tukamwambia sisi tutatake cover nyuma, yeye advance asaidie.
The next few minutes would prove crucial as Aidan had to persuade the lady to trust him.
So I touched him, nikaona mshtuka, nikaona definitely mtu hawezi kuwa ni adui. So hapo ndio nikaanza kumuongelesha, nikamwambia hey mom, I'm a police officer, I just to save you. Can you just wake up then we go? So she didn't believe me. Hakuwa naamini mimi ni askari. So I decided nikaona let me turn the other round. We can meet face to face. I believe that I'm a police officer.
And Aiden also had to gain the little girl's confidence.
But kwanza niambia, are you bad boy? No, I'm not bad. I'm a police officer. Hapo ndio akakubali maneno yangu.
His friend Tofik then swooped in to help speed up their escape, and thus the family of 3 lived to tell the tale. But the image that would capture the nation's attention, even going beyond borders, was that of a police officer holding a gun in one hand and a baby in the other. The man in the picture is 33-year-old Benjamin Chemjor, a police officer attached to the Criminal Investigation Department. On that Saturday, he set off to rescue about 40 people in a shop. As the rest started to move out, Benjamin spotted a baby in the corner.
Mimi ni mzazi. Na niko mzazi, niko na msichana wa miezi 4. Ambapo nilipomuona huyo msichana mdogo, nikaona akiwa mtoto wangu. Surely am I going to leave this? Sitamwacha.
Their stories are captured in powerful images that have been beamed across the world. In the midst of images of death and anguish, these and other police officers seen making a difference. But the tag hero makes them uncomfortable. They say it is all in a day's work.
Kama utaweza saidia mtu, hiyo ndio kitu ya maana kabisa duniani.
The primary duty of police officers is to protect property and human lives, but rogue police officers have eroded the image of police officers among the public. The story of the Westgate heroes serving to remind Kenyans that police officers are people too. Wilkis Tanyabo, KTN in Nairobi.
True heroes indeed. Now, following that fateful weekend after the terror claimed lives and traumatized the nation, followed an attack of another kind, wanton theft from unattended shops, cash safes and alcohol. The big question is, just who were the Westgate looters? Ashamwilo reports.
Every second of their heroism was captured, lauded by Kenyans and the world at large. But now, the reputation of officers from Kenyan security agencies is hanging in the balance. A PR nightmare, most have termed it, as the discussions of alleged looting at the Westgate Mall intensified.
Salman mugging the dead.
This short video captured by a store owner has now shifted that debate to a whole new level.
Look at the amount of drinking that has taken place.
Just 36 seconds long, and the video has created an online frenzy. Most Kenyans pointing the finger of blame at security forces who had exclusive access to the site during the 4-day siege.
Our cash box is missing. A lot of our clothes are on the floor on the water, and a lot of our stock is missing.
While some store owners managed to salvage a few goods, others were not so lucky. Broken glasses, empty cabinets is what was left of several multi-million shilling businesses.
It's not the mall that you used to see. Things are spoiled, glasses are broken, everything is everywhere.
Only 3 businesses so far have reported suspected theft of property, and their cases are being investigated.
Because that's a very bad sign. That means that we have forces in this country who work because the country is very democratic. Given an opportunity, they can behave like any other force in Africa, killing hopelessly, stealing, looting.
The government, while recognizing the heroes of the attack, has remained tight-lipped over the looting allegations. Could the perpetrators have been the survivors who made their way out during the rescue mission?
Police were screening people. They're just checking you out, lie on the floor, give me your ID, what's your name?
Could it have been the terrorists inside the mall whose whereabouts up to now remain unknown? And most importantly, who will carry the cross for this shameful act that has left Kenyans with a bitter taste in their mouths? Ashamwilu, KTN, Nairobi.
Wanton theft from unattended shops, cash safes and alcohol. That story by Ashamwilu is the focus of our big question tonight. We are asking you, should the Kenya Defence Forces take responsibility for the looting of shops at Westgate during the siege?
It is a big question indeed. Kenyans question Kenyans have been asking themselves. So tell us what you think. SMS your yes or no opinion plus a brief comment, of course, to the number 22155. You can also tweet us at Linda Ogutu, at KTN Kenya, and at Ben Kitili. We shall sample some of those comments during this live newscast.
Well, there are growing concerns that the conflicting reports of the number of Westgate attack victims could compromise the DNA profiling process. And as KTN's Dennis Onsarigo now reports on the ongoing probe and the rising fears that delayed identification of the victims could affect the evidence still being held at the scene of the crime.
Flames from candles still burning near the Westgate shopping mall, 12 days since attackers stormed the mall. Next to the candles that have been burning day and night is a mall turned into a crime scene. A place that 2 weeks ago was a leisure spot of choice for thousands in the city. 67 is the figure the government has provided as the number of those who died in the deadly Saturday attack. But details are scanty about the identity of those killed here. So is the number of those missing and suspected to have been caught up in the attack. Apart from the details of Kenyan nationals killed here, the government has not been keen in making public the photos and names of foreigners. The United Kingdom at first said it had lost 3 of their own, but the number has since risen to 6, with conflicting reports on the number of American citizens killed. Away from the mall is the delicate process of matching DNA samples of remains of 10 people, which were recovered from the mall, with experts warning time could be running out.
When you have fresh samples, a profile can be generated within 2 days. When you have degraded samples, it requires much more time. If you're dealing with more difficult tissue types or sample types, you could even be looking at several months. We'll generate a profile, very much like a fingerprint. You're looking at a DNA print. And this profile basically says this is who this individual is in terms of their genetic makeup.
Indeed, the Kenyan security agencies have admitted they do not have the bodies of 5 slain men accused of raining terror on innocent victims. Experts are painting a grim picture.
There'll be cases where you have an incomplete profile because of the nature of the body. Maybe it was too far degraded that does not yield any usable DNA. So that is a possibility. There's also the possibility that the person you're looking for, the person that you're being tested against, is not your kin, and that is why there's no match.
The Kenyan government has not maintained a list of missing persons. The Kenya Red Cross Society has given the figure of 39 people still reported missing. Without reference samples, efforts to get a closure on the Westgate Mall attack by identifying the still faceless attackers could turn out to be one long undertaking.
They'll use tissues. If tissue samples are still intact, they will use hair, they could use teeth, muscle, bone, nails, fluids. If body fluids are still present, then they could also use those.
Forensic teams are yet to gain access to a section of the mall where it is suspected there could be more bodies buried under the rubble. There are now genuine fears and concerns that bodies, if any, continue to be holed up under the rubble. Investigators are likely to return with a negative result from samples collected from here. There are also murmurs among international investigators that Kenyan authorities are not doing much. Dennis Onsarigo, KTN, at the Westgate Mall, Nairobi.
Now, perhaps more important than any outcome from the Westgate siege, many Kenyans are asking for answers on how the attack happened, something that President Uhuru Kenyatta said would be sought through a commission of inquiry. The term commission of inquiry, however, doesn't inspire the confidence that it should. KTN's John Alan Namu reports.
The Westgate attack was as confounding as it was devastating. As the dead are honored and the injured recover, President Uhuru Kenyatta resolutely made a statement made often by his predecessors in times of crisis.
We will also be putting in place a commission of inquiry to establish if we could have done things better.
In fulfilling the former part of his statement, President Kenyatta will have more than the litany of questions surrounding the siege to assuage. He'll also be battling history. That of the formation of commissions of inquiry whose recommendations have been filed between volumes of yet more recommendations.
The public is demanding answers now.
Charles Wangoho from Governance Monitoring Institute, AFRICOG, sums up this history.
Instead of dealing with the issue at the moment, a commission is set up to sort of delay the process of actually dealing with the problem.
In 2008, AFRICOG released a report titled Postponing the Truth, an indictment of this history, the byproduct of which is public amnesia, which delaying or not acting on issues of public concern has caused. From the Ouko Commission of Inquiry to the Ndunguland report, the Commission of Inquiry card has been pulled as a public pressure valve of sorts. In recent history, only 2 commissions have had their recommendations successfully implemented. Those of the Kriegler Commission,
I'm pleased to receive this report,
and those of the Waki Commission.
Your Excellency, the entire report.
Handling of the Waki Commission's recommendations especially showed the low regard that even the commissioners had for the government, summed up in 2 words: secret envelope.
With the Waki Commission, where even though it was presented to the president, a list was also provided to the mediator at the time, Kofi Annan.
Still, there is an opportunity to break from the past in ensuring that the noise that comes from the inquiry isn't a thud as its recommendations land on yet more piles of reports.
If only because of the public's thirst for answers surrounding what exactly happened at the Westgate shopping mall as from the 21st of September, then it's safe to say that this same public will be hoping that the government's inability or reluctance to deal with the recommendations from past commissions set up to look into various aspects of Kenya's history won't prove prelude to how they deal with the answers from the commission set up to deal with what exactly happened at Westgate. John Alenamu, KTN, Nairobi.
That is the confidence or lack of it that Kenyans have on commissions of inquiry.
Indeed, let's bring you a very painful story from Nakuru, and parents of a 10-week-old baby are accusing a Nakuru hospital of negligence after the baby developed a medical complication that led to the amputation of her leg.
The hospital is, however, disputing these claims, saying the mother and baby were in perfect health when they were discharged from the hospital. Here's KTN's Kamche Menza.
It was a bundle of joy for Rachel Aluvisia and James Njuguna as they welcomed a new member to their family on the 18th of July this year. But the joyous moment was short-lived. A week later, after mother and baby were discharged, things started taking a different dimension.
Nyumbani tukakaa wiki moja, mtoto hakuwa na shida yoyote, lakini akaanza kuwa na joto, hanyonyi na analia, na alikuwa pia ana converse.
Rachel says their first stop was at the Rift Valley General Hospital, but the long queue to have a doctor's attention sent them away, and so they decided to head to the hospital where she had given birth to the newborn. The baby was admitted after being diagnosed with malaria and pneumonia, but days later the baby's condition went from bad to worse.
Damu alikuwa anamtoa kwa miguu wakitaka kupeleka kwa lab. Nikaenda kuongea na nasi moja, nikamwambia naona mtoto amezidiwa sana, ni kama ako weak. Na venye hata alikuwa na breathe si sasa hivi venye ana breathe.
Rachel says she noticed a bluish color change on the legs of the baby when she was changing her.
Tukaita daktari, tukawauliza kwa nini mguu imebadilika, wakakuja, wakaanza kutoa damu, wakimpima pima, hawakutuambia. Akiadmitiwa walikuwa wanasema tu ako na infection. So walikuwa wanasema wanatibu hiyo infection.
The 2 parents were forced to remain at the hospital. However, Rachel says the condition did not seem to improve, the legs now turning black.
Kesho yake vile mguu iliturn, ndio walisema waite daktari, hawana daktari wa watoto. So wakaita daktari wao kutoka nje. Vile daktari alikuja, akakuja, akaangalia mtoto, and then hiyo maji yenye mtoto alikuwa amekewa drip, alibadilisha immediately. So mimi nilifeel like there was something wrong. Kwa nini anabadilisha hiyo maji na wale ni daktari wameka the same maji?
Rachel claims that she later learned that her baby was placed on a drip with a dosage for an adult and not an infant. It was thus an extreme overdose. A month later, after a pediatrician was called in, the health of the baby improved, but the condition of her legs remained the same. And finally, the doctors declared that they would have no other option but to have the baby's legs amputated, an option that both parents rejected.
Life ya mtoto wetu na anaenda kukatwa mguu. Mtoto siku moja atatuuliza mguu nini ilifanya. ama tulifanya nini, tujui kosi yake ni nini. So tuko nataka kujua kosi ya hii mguu ni nini, na kama hiyo hospitali iko hivyo, hiyo wanachukua kitu kwa mzaha.
The baby was discharged and the disturbed parents then sought a second opinion from doctors at the AIC Kijabe Hospital. In Kijabe, there was a ray of hope when doctors said that only partial amputation may be required.
She arrived with what we call ischemia, which means that the tissue is dying of the end of her foot on the right and of her leg below the knee on the left.
The parents believe that doctors at the Nakuru hospital could have done something to prevent their baby's suffering in the several weeks she was admitted there. They claim there was a misdiagnosis as the baby was being treated for malaria. And when we contacted the administration of Nakuru Nursing Home, they claimed the baby developed health problems elsewhere and not at their hospital.
The baby was very sick. We treated and she improved. It's only that the leg had a problem which did not initiate from here. She came the way, because 9 days after birth, anything could have happened out there.
And now there has been a sad end to the tale. Doctors at Kijabe Hospital say they were forced to amputate the child's leg last Saturday to avoid further infection. Kamchemenza, KTN from Nakuru.
Definitely an experience that no parent should have to go through.
True that.
All right, so the government is planning to audit work permits and the prospects of power generation. Bonnie Tunya will have details of this in the day's business news. But for now,
we're taking a short break. Don't go too far.
Work permits revoked. Government set to audit work permits in a crackdown on illegal foreigners.
Country today, you find a nation boy who cannot talk good English, cannot talk Swahili, but he's standing there.
The result has been an increase in unemployment, pushing more and more Kenyans into poverty and hurting the performance of the economy as a whole.
That's why today, Mr. Chair, you do find so many people who are not even qualified, but they have work permits.
But now the government says this must come to an end.
Mr. Chair, we are going to cancel those work permits, and we want proper procedure to be followed, and the law must be followed up to the latter.
Speaking before the Parliamentary Committee on Labour and Social Welfare, Kambi said the problem had started when the government gave the Immigration Department powers to issue work permits, even though the Labour Ministry was best placed to handle such matters.
By law, Chair, we are supposed to be the secretariat of that, but those functions were moved without any apparent reasons to the Immigration Ministry. The issue of issuing work permits must be done, and the law is very clear. It shall be done by the Ministry of Labour in consultation with the Ministry of Immigration.
According to the Kenyan law, anyone whose work permit is revoked has a maximum of 14 days to exit the country or risk facing prosecution for being in the country illegally. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business Today.
Kenya has invited bids from investors for the development of 2 power plants with a combined output of 1,800 megawatts from coal and natural gas. The Energy Ministry has indicated this. Now, the Energy and Petroleum Ministry said it was seeking investors to develop 700 to 800 megawatts natural gas-fired plant near the port city of Mombasa. The ministry also plans to build 900 to 1,000 megawatt coal power plant in Lamu, where the government wants to develop a $5.5 billion mega port that will link landlocked South Sudan and Ethiopia to the Indian Ocean. With a capacity of 1,664 megawatts against the maximum recorded demand of about 1,410 megawatts, Kenya is under pressure to boost power generation as it is expected to expand its growth by more than 5%. With only 2 months to go before the government rolls out the digital migration, a number of Kenyans are still in the dark about the concept. The switch-off is planned for December 13th, and as Michael Karanja found out, a lot more still needs to be done.
After 2 false starts, digital migration is finally poised to start taking root in the country starting December 13th. But even with the extended period, not many Kenyans are aware of this new cut-off date and are ill-prepared for the switch-off date from analog to digital transmission. The migration debate has been here since early 2010, when the government agreed it would like to be ahead of the curve and switch before the global deadline of 2015. But despite the burning desire to do so, the message doesn't seem to have resonated well with the masses.
I'm prepared. I'm just waiting for it, some financial issues here and there, and I'll just settle it.
I'm not aware of digital migration and the timings at which it is going to end or it is going to stop.
Lack of awareness, the high prices of set-top boxes, and government easing off its tough deadlines have all contributed to the slow shift. The Communications Commission of Kenya says the country requires 4 million set-top boxes to move from analog broadcasting to digital and has set a step-by-step migration, with Nairobi falling on December 13th this year. Migration in other parts of the country will be done gradually as it seeks to meet the global deadline of 2015. The switch-off dates for Mombasa, Nyeri, Meru, Kisumu, Nakuru and Eldoret are set for March 2014, while the remaining parts of the country have until June 30th, 2014.
The set is as analog as most of the TV sets around where I stay.
So far, pay television providers have been the biggest beneficiaries in the sale of set-top boxes, with CCK statistics indicating that 224,000 of the gadgets were bought as of December in readiness for the migration to digital TV are owned by StarTimes, GoTV and Zuku. MultiChoice Africa has offered to supply 1.5 million set-top boxes at a subsidized fee to Kenyans to facilitate a smooth migration from analog to digital TV broadcasting. Michael Karanja, KTN Business Today.
Now, there was an easy calm at the House at AK headquarters. AK chairman was facing a vote of no confidence by disgruntled regional heads who accused him, the long-serving chairman, of making unilateral decisions. The affiliates also questioned the end product of the Federation's constitution, but after several hours of closed-door meeting, the proverbial white smoke bellowed from the boardroom as they announced a truce.
Athletics Kenya has been one of the iconic sporting federations in Kenya and by extension Africa. However, administrative squabbles threatened to tear the association apart. It was no longer at ease at the Riyadh House, with regional heads raising questions over sections of the constitution and unilateral appointments. These appointments allegedly were made by Chairman Isaiah Kiplagat. And Wednesday's meeting had everything to do with Kiplagat's continued stay at Riyadh House. The affiliates wanted the chairman to accept their call for a special general meeting where the contents of the constitution, which they say was not what was passed before going to press. The body language portrayed a different picture from what journalists who had camped at the offices were finally told after the closed-door meeting.
All the things that you have been reading have been ironed out, if there were any. And therefore, we will continue to serve the Federation the way we have been serving.
One of the contentious issues was the constitution.
If anybody, particularly all the members, all the stakeholders, sometimes they have issues, they might look at the constitution and say maybe there's an issue here and there. They have asked them to give us suggestions on which areas they feel need to be attended to.
We have set it down and we have agreed on everything, so now those kind of issues, we have buried them.
During the meeting, they resolved that all the Athletics Kenya members and the executive will hold a 2-day strategic meeting on the 25th of this month as they finalize on their calendar of events. For KTN Sports Today, I'm Hassan Juma.
All right, the newly minted world marathon record holder Wilson Kipsang is still savoring his success in road races. The 31-year-old policeman was flown to his rural home in Iten in a police helicopter as family, friends and fellow athletes joined in celebrating his blistering 2 hours, 3 minutes and 26 seconds, which brought back the Kenya World Marathon title. His Musukut village in Kerio Valley was the buzz of activity as residents welcomed home their son. The climax of the celebration switched with Florence Kiplagat, the women's winner, and his neighbor in Iten, climaxed at the AIC Church in Mindilio. Kipsang is currently his second in the World Marathon major standings with 61 points, just 4 points behind Tsegai Kabedi of Ethiopia.
Each and every race has its own performance. Sometimes you might train hard, but you find that during the race maybe you are not feeling well, or the weather conditions are not conducive. So it just turns up like that. But you find that there are times whereby training might go on very well. During the rest day, you feel okay, strong enough, strong athletes to compete together, strong pacemakers, and you find that the results becomes good.